Wouldn't it be nice to just get the cheat code for entrepreneurship? Wouldn't it be lovely if someone just told you exactly what you individually needed to do to be successful? I'm not talking about coaching or consulting or your BFF over mimosas. I'm talking about you, your destiny, and what you need to do to work with your particular style to get where you need to go. Well, I might not have all the answers, but today I'm being assisted by Kehla G. Kehla is a specialist in gene keys and human design, and especially taking those two concepts and applying them to business. She is a bold and impactful spiritual mindset coach for entrepreneurs who uses human design and gene keys in business. She guides entrepreneurs to radiate unwavering confidence and crystal clear clarity based on exactly how they should operate in their individual businesses. She fiercely demystifies the online space, and she champions transparency on your entrepreneurial journey. So, if you're interested in just getting a little bit more clear on how you can move forward based on your individuality, then, my friend, this episode is for you. All right, let's go.
Welcome to the Flourishing Entrepreneur Podcast with Alea Harris. If you're looking for actionable ways to stand out from the crowd by standing in your power, you've come to the right place. Each week, we help you and your fellow empire-building entrepreneurs become radically authentic and tap into your unique story to attract your ideal clients. Listen in and learn how to use energy alignment techniques and tried and true marketing strategies to transform from a leader to a legend. And now, your host, Powerhouse Story Brand Certified Guide, award-winning marketer, bioenergetic business coach, and Japanese whiskey lover, Alea Harris.
Hey, Kehla, thank you so much for joining me on the Flourishing Entrepreneur Podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing so good. I'm really excited to connect with you and have such a juicy conversation together.
We are going to have a juicy conversation, but before we do, please tell the people a little bit more about you.
Yeah, so my name is Kehla. It's spelled differently, and I know that that's always like a conversation starter for people. Like, how do you say your name? And so I live in Victoria, BC. I've been in my coaching business for almost 5 years now, and I actually started as a teacher a number of years ago. And from there, I had an athletic background. I got into personal training, and then that led me into the coaching and the mindset side because I realized, wow, people will really thrive if they have a great mindset. And so in 2019, that's when I started online coaching, and that's how it got me into the realm of the industry and just the love I feel for supporting people. And then human design and Gene Keys found me. And that was about a couple of years into my business. And this is what I use now to support entrepreneurs in their business so that they can really leverage their energetic imprinting, their gifts, and build a very strong relationship with themselves so that they can show up as an authority in the work that they do. So that's kind of my long story short of how I got to where I am. Never thought that that's how it would be, starting as a teacher and then getting into human design and Gene Keys, which I never even knew existed. But that's what brought me to where I am today. So I'm excited to continue to dive into everything with you.
Awesome. So we're going to get into some of our hard-hitting questions in a little bit, but I have a feeling that the people are going to need to know what human design and gene keys are before we move on, because all of the questions are most likely going to come back to them. So let's start off at the basic of the basic of the basic and give us some quick and dirty definitions, please.
Yes. So your human design is based on your birth information, the time that you're born, the date that you're born, and where you're born. And you can go onto a website called Genetic Matrix, or if you Google human design chart, that will show you where you can input your information. You're going to get a body graph when you put your information in, and it's going to be very confusing and overwhelming at first. I will be blunt. If you don't know how to read it, you're going to be like, WTF, but it's very fascinating. So when you get this body graph, there's 5 different types. Each different type has their own way of how they're designed to operate in the world. And in layers with that, I'm giving like the real short story here. In layers of that, there's specific gifts, there's specific areas of opportunity that you have, but it's very much a massive permission slip for people to show up authentically and to really catch themselves when they're starting to operate in their business or in their life the way that other people are because it was, successful for them. So one of the big aspects of human design, we have the Kabbalah tree, we have astrology, we have the I Ching system. It's many systems layered on that created the system of human design. Two of the things that ties in human design and gene keys is astrology and the I Ching system. So when you're looking at your body graph, you're going to see all these numbers inside of the shapes. These numbers in human design are known as gates. In gene keys, they're known as the gene keys, and they come from a shared system called the I Ching. The I Ching is the 64 levels of consciousness that we have as humans. So in the gene keys, I use this, like your human design is like how you're designed to operate, how you're designed to take action, what is in alignment for you, what's not in alignment for you. And your gene keys is about your pathway to illumination. It's very contemplative. It's more feminine. You really approach the system from a place of curiosity. And so with the astrology aspect, there's 11 planets that come from your human design chart that create the gene keys. There's 3 different sequences. The first sequence is called the activation sequence. This is what activates you. It's also where your zones of genius lie. The second sequence is the Venus sequence. This is how you're designed to experience unconditional love. And I use this to support clients with actually connecting more in depth with their audience, with their clients. And then the Pearl sequence is all about prosperity. It's about how you're designed to be of service through the work that you do. So I use both of these systems in how I coach clients because it just blows the cookie cutter approach completely out the window, and it really allows people to come home to themselves. And so it's something that just brings me so much joy, and I absolutely love talking about this. So that's kind of my long-winded but also very condensed explanation of what these systems are. So if you have questions or if that's clear, let me know, because that was a lot of information.
Kayla, I'd just like to say that I'm very impressed, because I was not long-winded. You took many, 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 many complicated topics and were able to distill them very well. You can tell that this is what you do. So we have human design, which, by the way, I was at a summit, and I was speaking at the summit. I also popped in and attended some of the sessions, and one of them was about human design. And I had got my human design chart before. I already knew I was a generator. And she was explaining the gates and the channels and the things and that. And I was like, at some point in the middle, I was like, okay, can you just give me a quick and dirty on? It is a very complicated system. But the thing that I think drives people forward when you're talking about human design or gene keys or astrology is this in-depth desire to know themselves. Because from my perspective, we come into these bodies in this lifetime knowing ourselves very well, and then we get lost somewhere along the way with all of societal pressures and the shoulds and the coulds and all the things. And so we have to rediscover ourselves, and whatever path and whatever tool that we use to do that, every new insight makes us feel that much closer to that original self. My daughter's 11 months old, and I love watching her original self, right? She is, surprise, surprise, very verbose. She she can't really like talk. Like there's not lots of actual words happening, but there's sounds happening, but she communicates very well, and what she likes, what she doesn't like, the things that make her smile, the things that she gives you attitude about. It's just this real little soul without anybody messing around with it yet. And I'm thinking to myself, like, gosh, this is all that we're trying to be. All of us are trying to get back to being like how my daughter is now. And I love that you have tools that help people do that, to heal and to then reach their full potential. But how do I know when it's a really good time to use one of these tools? What are some of the clues that will clue me in when I'm off or I need to course correct? Or is it that the tools tell me that, or it's like, oh no, I really should look in my human design for this thing? When do I connect with the tools that you've provided?
I love this question, because one of the really big things about these systems is that they're designed to show you how to operate in the most easeful way in your life. And one of the things I love about human design is that we have every type, right? So you mentioned you're a generator. I'm also a generator. We have manifestors, manigens, projectors, and reflectors. Each type has their own, what we call not self theme. So when you're not operating in alignment, you're going to feel that. So for you and I, we're going to feel frustration, right? And then we have anger and frustration. We have disappointment and bitterness. And so I think really at any time, it's not like, oh, you're a new business owner and you should use human design. Like I've coached and talked with multiple seven figure business owners. And it's like, I had these conversations and these sessions with them and I talked to them about their human design. It's still applicable. So it's any time where you feel like you are just stuck in that not self theme. And you're like, I feel like I'm forcing things. I'm feeling burnt out. I'm feeling like things are not working. It's always worth coming back to looking at, okay, how can I leverage my chart? And there's different ways you can leverage it. It might be how you feel like how you're expressing yourself isn't landing for people. And it's like, okay, there's parts of your chart you can look at certain planets. How can you share a story from that? How can you position yourself as an authority? How can you solve an issue because you've lived that experience? Looking at your human design chart, you're like, oh my God, this theme is so common for me. I know exactly how to talk about this and solve this problem. So it's coming back home to yourself rather than looking at, okay, what works? And then being strategic in a way that has an agenda rather than doing it from a place of authenticity.
Speaking of a place from authenticity, we've been talking about the other people up until this point, but Kehla, it's time to get real.
I love that.
What are some of your own limiting beliefs or your own moments of misalignment that have caused you grief and issues in the past? Tell us a story about ones that you maybe currently hold and how you've used these tools or other tools to overcome them.
Yes, I think one of the biggest beliefs that I've been grappling with is how much we relate to money and how certain amounts of money mean certain things. And let's say entrepreneurship, I think people can attest to the reality of going through ebbs and flows, like big time, right? I've had this year in particular, so I'll be really real. This year in particular is probably my third lowest year in the last 5 years. And so it was interesting because I caught the belief that, Kehla, you're not worthy enough or you're not smart enough. You're not good enough to help people because you're not making as much money as before. You have less credibility. And this has been a complete mindfuck. And I hope I can say the F-bomb because that's how it feels.
You already did. It's happening.
Okay, good. I was like, it's a mindfuck. And so I really had to sit with, Kehla, just because you're in an ebb in your business does not make you any less valuable, does not take away the knowledge that you have, does not take away the wisdom that you hold. It does not take away the experience that you've lived and the previous results that you've created for yourself and your clients. And so I think that's really given me the permission to just be so unapologetic. And it's like me prioritizing. So if I look at this from a human design lens, it's like me prioritizing, like as a generator, what brings you joy, Kehla? If you're in this shitstorm of you can't control certain things and you're rebuilding, what is it that lights you up? Following my sacral of like being creative, that pulls me forward and keeps me in the light of like everything is temporary. And so that's been really helpful. And that's been something that I've been grappling with probably for the last 14 months, if I'm being completely honest. And I'm just like continuing to move through. There's a really good quote that I heard recently and I absolutely love it. And it's "Don't quit in the dark." I love this quote.
Love that. That reminds me of if you're going through hell, keep going. That's one of my quotes. Don't stop. Now is not the time to stop. Keep going. That also reminds me of a book, and I say book, but I mean it's a book, but it's like 50 pages, teeny book, and it's more of just a long parable. It's called "The Knight in Shining Armor." Have you heard about this book?
I have not.
My spiritual coach had me read it a while ago because the ebbs and the flows of life are something that I'm constantly battling with. Financial life, any ebb and any flow. Seems like I'm not ebbing and flowing with the ebb and the flow. I always want to ebb and flow the opposite direction. And so this book, The Knight in Shining Armor, talks about this king, and I'm going to give a shorter version, right? And he goes through good times and he goes through bad times. But at the beginning, this sorcerer, I think it is, gives him a ring. And he tells him to go look at the ring after something bad happens, and then look at the ring after something good happens. And the ring says the same thing. This too shall pass. The good passes, the bad passes. Who you are and how you navigate it is what is the only constant, right? So they say the only constant is change. That is true, but that doesn't feel helpful, right? You're like, obviously, I'm going through this constant change and it sucks. Like, no, the only constant is how you decide to interact with the change, good or bad. You obviously, when the good, you have the appreciation, you take pause and you take joy. But in the bad, you have the appreciation and you also take pause and you feel the joy through all of it. And I think that is, for me, what's been carrying me through, because, girl, you want to talk about the third, whatever you said, this year, these past 2 years, they've been a little rough. Do you have kids, Kayla?
What's that?
Kids.
No, I have cats, but
You
soon I will have kids. I know they don't
Cats,
count.
I know it can be needy. My husband calls me his kitty cat because, I might be a little bit much. But different than having children. And then you have a kid who comes out of your body and you're all jacked up from that. And then I had postpartum depression. The business went down, blah, 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 blah. Horrible time. I mean, yes, my baby is super cute. Like, you should check her out on Instagram at Ruby Coral Harris. She's adorable. But other than that, rough. And I have had to learn and say and have written on my desk, this too shall pass.
I love that reminder. It gives me the energy of being unfuckwithable.
Exactly.
Like, you just get to be the eye of the storm. Like, that's where the calm is.
Exactly. That's where the calm is. And one of the things, I love that you said it like that, because one of the things is from the eye, that's when you actually really even realize what kind of storm you're in. Like, you can see it. You have a point of clarity, calmness, observation. When you make the decision, because it is a decision to step out from the eye into the rest of the storm, right? That's a decision. When you do that, then you're just all flooring around. You don't know what to do. You don't know which way is up. You start services, you cancel services, you start clients, you blah, 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 because you're making the decision to stay in the fray. Instead of making the decision that come hell or high water, you will find the eye of the storm and try to figure out how to stay in it. It's all about the decisions that we make, right? I don't know. I feel like some of that was also just like me talking to me. She wanted to hear my inner monologue just a little bit. So we're talking about staying in the eye of the storm, right? What situations pull you back into the storm, out of the eye, into the storm, out of your radically authentic self, out of alignment? Screw the gene keys, screw the human design. Let's just go and make bad decisions. Like, what are those things? And then how do you pull yourself back in to the eye, the place of clarity?
Yes, I've noticed, and a good friend of mine pointed this out for me, and I feel like this is going to be relatable to almost everyone who's listening to this, but I definitely get shiny object syndrome, where if I'm in a shitstorm and I'm looking to relieve the pressure or figure it out, it's like, oh, I need to go and invest in this program, or I need to go and like consider this certification, like something is missing. Like, I go and I try to fill the void, but ultimately it's just a representation of how much I'm not trusting myself in that moment. And it's hilarious because that's actually one of the really big things that's come up for me this year, is that me having shiny object syndrome over the last several years has gotten me into a financial situation that I really had to face this year. And it wasn't like, oh, I'm just going to manifest some really high income months and I'm going to pay this shit off as soon as possible. Like, it just didn't get to that point. And now I'm like, okay, Kayla, you're going to be radically responsible and go back into the calm, of the storm, and you deal with your shit. And so that's really been something that's come up for me. But at the same time, I don't regret any of the financial decisions or financial risks that I took. I think they made me a lot smarter. and also really helped me differentiate between, is this a resource that's actually going to support me, or is this like a soother that's going to make me think that I'm doing the right thing so that I can be comfortable where I'm actually uncomfortable right now?
Mm-hmm. So if anybody's listened to this podcast before, hopefully this is not your first episode. If it is, welcome. We're about to have so much fun together. If it's not, you heard me talk ad nauseum about all the mistakes I've done made. Girl, it's almost like I might as well have taken a trash can full of money and just lit it on fire. It would have been just as productive. When you were talking, I said, oh my God, I have a kindred spirit. I want to know from you, because I'm going to share. I'm not like trying to be like one-sided, like, tell me all your stuff. I'm not going to tell you none of mine. I'm perfect. But I want to know from you, when you were making those decisions and everything felt right, part of it still felt wrong, right? Didn't you, at part of you know you were doing it wrong? What made you do it anyways?
I think so. Hilariously, I'm gonna bring up human design again because this is what is supporting me. I know. So I have, like, if I look at my human design chart, I only have 2 out of 9 centers defined. Those 2 centers are the G center, which is like your identity, your sense of direction, your lovability, and it's connected to my sacral center, which is my authority. I make decisions based on what lights me up and like my creative energy. And before human design, I would not trust myself because I would be making decisions based on what I think I should be doing. You know, for example, my fiance, he's a projector. He's incredibly intelligent. He is not as into risk as much as I am. And, you know, he's a splenic authority. He's all about making decisions like what is healthiest, like what is safe. So I used to be very much influenced by his decisions and being like, no, you should save money first and then do this. And he would just give me the advice and project his view because that's just how he operates. And so when I found human design, I was like, oh, I don't actually have to listen to external things. I'm gonna listen to myself. And I really started to follow my gut. And I was like, I feel this inexplicable magnetic pull that I need to do this. And it's funnily enough because it was specifically the 9-month human design Gene Keys program certification that I signed up for 2 years ago. Was like the biggest investment I'd ever made. It was completely irresponsible that I did it. And I did it. And that's literally the backbone of my business. And I don't regret it. And so had I listened to the advice of like, oh no, you should save first, you should do this, I wouldn't be where I am right now. And I would rather be where I am right now than anywhere else because I know that I have all the resources and everything that I need right now. And so it really, the only way I can explain it is like, it's literally a guttural response. And I feel like you're probably going to resonate with that because you're also a generator, right? I don't know if you're an emotional authority, but still that like guttural response of like, this is exciting me. Like I can't explain that it is pulling me into it. I'm going to go with it, even if it doesn't make sense. And so that's really it. Like long story short, I like just trusted my gut and I don't regret any of it.
I love that. I would like to replay something that Kehla just said. What she said was, I like where I am. I wouldn't change any of it. Now, did she say that because she's completely debt-free and she's talking to me from her private island in Tahiti? No, not yet. Soon, maybe, but not yet. No, she said that because she realized the lessons that she learned were valuable. The place that she is somewhere she likes. She followed what her insides were telling her to end up somewhere that resonated with herself on a deep level. I just would like to posit to you, dear listener. Dear listener, can you do that? I feel like you are having trouble doing that because I have trouble doing that. I have trouble with all of the crap that's going on around me saying, no, I actually like this. No, I'm glad I made that decision. It might have been a bad decision. It might have been a good decision, but I'm glad I made that decision. Instead of, oh, I'm so horrible. Oh, it's so wrong. Oh, I'm so bad. And then you fall into this guilt, shame, battered spiral and you become your own battered wife, right? it's so much healthier. I really want, if you didn't like for real, actually go rewind it as you're listening to this, because what Kehla just said was so powerful. Her presence of self is admirable and inspiring. To be able to be in a store and still say, I'm so glad that I am here. Oh, I could end the interview right now. I'm feeling thoroughly inspired.
I really appreciate you mirroring that back to me, because it really was just in the moment, like channeled presence, like, you know what? I think I'm done beating myself up. I think that this is cathartically happening through our conversation because we're just being so real, and I
I tend
absolutely
to have
love
that
it.
effect on people.
So good. So good.
Okay, so you've gone through some stuff. Oh yeah. Wait, I told you I was going to share. So yes, I have had very similar experiences. The reason why I decided to keep going with making bad decisions, like in sequence, like it'd be one thing if I was just one, but no, I'm a pro at what I do. If I'm going to make a bad decision, Kehla, I'm going to do it multiple times just to make sure I've done it correctly. Oh, in this bad decision series of mine, I kept doing it because I had misplaced hope and an undefined sense of self mixed in with a heaping portion of feeling unvaluable, unworthy, and lack of trust. So there is all of that popped into a very disgustingly horrible mixture, and that caused me to make the decisions that I made. However, like you, I'm very glad that I did, because they've taught me to truly appreciate money, to truly appreciate what I've gotten, to truly appreciate who I am, and to be able to prioritize what I actually need to do and what I don't. Because when you have a grip of money, you can spend it on whatever you want. And that's how you end up being like, yeah, I made all this top line revenue. This is my story. I made all this top line revenue. I'm rich. Until you scroll down that good old income statement, that profit and loss, and at the bottom, you look at the actual profit number. And you're like, oh, wait a minute. Right? That's when I made my bad decisions. I told you I wasn't going to leave you hanging, so I decided I needed to share.
No, I appreciate that.
Vulnerable by yourself.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I was like, oh my gosh, when I saw the questions for this interview, I was like, okay, Kehla, you're just gonna reach to the bottom of your soul and share it all and put it on the table. And I love that you're right there with me. That makes it even more fun.
Oh yeah, girl. We're not gonna be down in here by yourself. That's mean. Okay, so but you talked about your fiance and you talked about him being a projector, which I'm assuming is exactly how it sounds, where he is very good at saying what he thinks and what he feels and expecting other people to follow it. And you had to be like, that's your jam. That's not necessarily my jam. And we talked about how his advice maybe was something that you decided not to follow and how that worked out in the end being very centering for you. But what is some other advice, some business strategy or generalized advice that you wish that you had never followed?
I think I still see this online, and I think this leads to burnout. It might seem like a small thing, but I think it's a big thing. And it's just really this, oh, you have to show up all the time. You have to be consistent. You have to sell all the, like, it's like we're forgetting that there's actually humans behind the business and we're trying to operate like we're a fucking factory. And I love and appreciate things like AI or scheduling posts, or obviously being able to grow a team and bring on a VA or bring on like an ad manager, whatever it is that you're doing. But I think that at the end of the day, one of the biggest reasons, and I've had so many fucking conversations with entrepreneurs, like the biggest reasons that people come into this industry, in the coaching industry, is because they had their own transformation. They went through their own shit and they just really want to pay it forward and support other people. And when you really boil that down, it comes down to humanity. So then when we forget that and we start doing things like being manipulative, or we just start being inauthentic the way that we share, and it starts to become very money focused, and it's not really about circulating wealth and empowering people, because that's why we started our business. I feel like it just becomes this climbing, like this scrabbling up the side of a mountain, like, oh, I need to get to the top and then I'll be successful. And it's just like, I don't know, I have this visualization in my head right now of just all chilling, floating down a river, enjoying a sunny fucking day with your drink of choice. And it's like, we're in this together. We're creating an industry where we're supporting one another, and it's coming from good intentions, and let's fucking focus on that. So that's really what I felt. Like I've gotten caught up in the drama, and now I've like pulled myself out. I'm like, everything is nuanced. Everything is nuanced. You know, you might share something one day that I fully disagree with. I'm not going to write you off as a person. Like there's this cancel culture shit that comes in here too. And it's like, okay, I might not agree with you today. I'm going to agree with you tomorrow. Like it's just like having more fluidity and not being so rigid and thinking we have to do things so specifically in order to produce specific results that we want.
A lot of that comes from, I think, too, well, cancel culture is something separate. We're going to get back to that. A lot of I have to do this specifically. I have to automate everything because I have to do all the things. So I have to automate everything in order to be able to do all the things that you're telling me to. Is from courses and people trying to sell their systems and people trying to sell, and don't get me wrong, I'm all for a good course, right? I love it. But it gets you thinking like this is the only way to do things. And we consume a lot of information. And this happened to me as well. I was consuming all this information. I was getting certifications up the wazoo. And I'm like, wait a minute, let me pull back. A lot of the times I think people make the mistake of not thinking past the information they've been given. So you take the course and you're like, well, that's just the way to do it, as opposed to, okay, I have this information from this course. I've read this book. I have this information from this certification. Now, what do I think about this? How do I want to operationalize this in the world? And I was like that for a long time. I mean, because you don't know. And as a baby business owner, as a baby entrepreneur, you're scared. You don't know what to do. This person seems like they're very successful. So you're just going to do it like they did, because that's a surefire way to make sure that you can pay your mortgage next month. That will work for a little while, but after a while, it will stop working. For me, it didn't stop working, but following and being a cookie cutter really slowed down how it worked. And then one day, after I had kind of come back to the world of the living after having my daughter, I just started saying real things and automating less, doing less, so that the things that I did do were more meaningful, were more powerful. And if I missed a week, I used to beat myself up, and I still was like, that doesn't feel good. But I'm like, okay, so I missed a week, but it was because I'm not ready to tell this story, but this is a story that needs to come next. And having conversations with yourself, I'm a StoryBrand certified guide. I think in story. I took, what's that chick's name? Amy Porterfield's Digital Course Academy years ago. I created many courses using it, and now I know how to create courses, but I'm like, but I want to do it this way. Or now the next thing that I come out with, I don't want a course. I want a workshop series. Everybody's doing the course. I want to get real with people. You take the information and you use it, but you don't just vomit it back out, right? Because it's not sexy. No one wants to go around and eat up your vomit.
Oh my God. No. This is actually one of the things that I love that you're saying this, because in particular, I feel like a lot of people, I mean, it looks like for me, are talking about human design in business. This is like definitely up and coming. It's a new thing.
It is totally the next wave. Yeah. Absolutely.
But the other thing that I noticed is Gene Keys is very elusive. Like people are like, what's that? I don't know how to apply this. I don't understand. And so exactly what you said, I did all the Gene Keys courses. I became a Gene Keys guide. Like I've read pieces of the books. I've listened to podcast episodes. I've done so much work. I've done my own reflection work. And all of a sudden it just came to me one day, this is how you can apply it to business. And I started sharing that. And it was like, Richard Rudd, the founder of the Gene Keys, he's not talking about that, but I'm talking about that. And that's the thing, is that we gain this information and we share it in a different way, and it's going to resonate with different people. If we're all just saying the same shit all the time, it's actually not inclusive.
No, it's not.
that's the reason why you want to be yourself, why you want to be authentic, why you just shared. Yeah, I didn't post every single day or 10,000 times a week. Went a week without doing it, but when I did show up, it was meaningful. Like that's intentional. I think that's what going to allow people to stand out is their storytelling and really connecting with others, because that can't be replicated. You and I could share a similar experience. Like you and I could both talk about our finances and whatever, you know, the shitstorm we just kind of went into. But the way you share your experience, the way I share my experience, even if we both have the same amount of debt, it's going to be a very different story. And that's perfect.
That's exactly how it's supposed to be, right? It's exactly how it's supposed to be. And then one quick note on cancel culture. Let's just stop it. Okay. Let's just, thank you very much. PSA. Stop cancel culture. Signed, Alea Harris. Okay. We've gone from the surface and we've gone a little deeper. Now I want to get the deepest question of the hour. Are you ready?
Yes.
So, Kehla, you've had a lot going on in your life, but what would you consider to be the most pivotal moment of your life, your moment of rebirth? And through that transition, what did you learn and how are you now better on the other side?
Yes. Okay. This is a big question. Obviously, it's like the mother lode of them all. And it's funny because I wouldn't say that I'm on the other side of this yet, but it's been the thing that I've been dealing with this year. And we've already touched on it. It's about money. And I actually this year, okay, I'm going to give a bit of backstory. I'm just going to say it like it is. I had a tough upbringing. My parents were separated. I had a very tumultuous relationship with my biological dad. And this year, I really realized how that toxicity has really affected my relationship with money. And just because money represents safety and security, you know, the masculine father figure, you know, I know this is gender roles, but I'm just going to say it because it's my experience. You know, that is designed to be the safety and security side. And typically the mother is like the nurturing side. And so this really fucking came up for me this year. And the biggest impact I noticed was that in May of 2023, I was having a conversation with my fiance, you know, and I've been like a little Miss Independent because obviously you couldn't rely on my dad to support me growing up. I'm just going to deal with my debt on my own. I'm going to deal with my business and my finances on my own. Like I'm not going to share with him because I don't want to bring him down. And I finally realized, you know, I was at the point where I was like, I can't do this by myself anymore. I really need to take responsibility for my debt and I need to let people help me. And I didn't want to do that before because in the past with my dad, I could never ask him for help. Like it was literally fucking everything up. So in May, I told my fiance, like, this is the debt that I have. This is the situation that I'm in. And obviously he like completely freaked out because it was just, you know, at the time it was stressful. But then I remember we're standing in the kitchen and I was like looking at him and I said, you know, I think that the reason why I've been unable to be straight with you and really look at this head on and stop denying it is because I like made it mean that I'm not safe with men and money. And that has been running my life. I've been with my fiance for over 10 years. So that's been going on for a long fucking time. And so it really blew up this year. And it got to the point where I was like, I want to consolidate my debt. You know, I have multiple 5 figures of debt that I need to consolidate. This year was a slow year in business. I'm not going to make it mean anything. I think I'm rebuilding in ways that I just don't see yet. But that, and then it also led me to going into trauma therapy. So last week I started trauma therapy and I'm like actually getting support with, you know, the challenges that I've had with my dad. Him and I are not talking. He refuses to talk to me. And I'm working on bringing inner peace to myself because I can feel inside my inner child that's like freaking out. You know, it's like, oh my God, financial stability. But now I'm like, I'm re-teaching myself, Kehla, ask for help. Kehla, consolidate your debt. Be responsible for yourself. Be honest with your fiance. Like allow yourself to be where you're at in your business because what you said earlier, this too shall pass. And so that's really been, you know, I feel like I'm still in this pivot. I'm not out of the debt yet. It will be in the next couple of weeks. I'm having a really important appointment to like solidify everything, have a plan to pay it off. And it's like, I'm still in the tunnel. Right. But like I said earlier, don't quit in the dark. So that's where I'm at. So I'm like not through it. I'm in the middle of the pivot, but it's a big one. And I think that I want to share this because it's an important message for people to just normalize, you know, money, being a woman, allowing yourselves to be supported. Like there's so much there to unpack. That could be a whole episode in itself.
It could be. And I also think that you were guided to share it because you, Kehla, and I were on a very similar path. So my father and I, we had a fine relationship in my life. My parents divorced when I was 4, but we was fine. He was never financially responsible for me, but he had quite a bit of money. But it was like, I remember this one time I had a half sister and then some step siblings, and they were giving out allowances to everybody there. And I was like 6, 7, something like that. And I was like, oh, I want mine. And it was, I mean, what, you're 7. So what is it, like $5? And his girlfriend at the time was like, no, we don't give you any money. We give your mom all of our money. And so I got nothing. And I remember I didn't even cry or whatever. I was more just like, what? I was confused. I remember being genuinely confused. And my dad has always chosen whatever woman he's with over me. And now we don't have a relationship. And I had to go on that healing journey. And of course, I don't know, for me, I don't want to say it will never end because it has gotten better, but it is a pathway. It's definitely a long, a long pathway of healing. But I will say that I had shared some of the exact same feelings around stability, around money, around power. Who has the power with money? Am I able to provide me this sense of stability? I remember feeling this, oh, you're taking me back. I remember feeling this hole, like I am complete except for this hole. And in that hole was a dad-sized hole. And inside of that hole was also my ability to take care of myself in any real substantial way without feeling like I was forcing it, right? So I am here to tell you that yes, it does pass, and yes, it does get better, and yes, you will move forward from this. Another resources for you or anybody that's listening, if you're in some financial issues, America's Small Business Development Center is free and incredibly helpful. They have debt consolidation. There's also local community development financial institutions, CDFIs. That's who helped me consolidate debt. I had per month, I was paying $8,000 in debt payments. And the CDFI helped me consolidate it to $450 per month in debt payments. So there are resources out there for you, Kehla, and for anybody else that's listening that's like, oh my God, that's me too. I love all of your dad stories, but what help me? That's what I would do to help you. Okay. How are you feeling, Kehla?
So good. This
Okay.
conversation is like so nourishing. I love it.
I'm glad. I try. Now that you've bared your soul, I want you to be able to replenish it with something wonderful. If you could ask the universe for something right now and be 100% sure that it would manifest, what would it be?
It's so funny because I do a lot of EFT work, like emotional freedom techniques of tapping, if people aren't familiar with that, right? I do a lot of that work. I meditate, I journal, and it's so interesting. It's such a push-pull between when we feel like we're really stuck and things are taking a long fucking time to move. And it's like asking, like, people can tell me, Kayla, it's going to be fine, you know? But I think knowing and being told, Kayla, the dreams that you have, getting out of this financial situation, creating that stability, growing, doing the things that you're focused on and moving so far beyond where you currently are, yes, it's going to happen. You know, because there's always that little bit of doubt, because then the doubt is there so that, quote, if it doesn't happen, then I don't have to be disappointed. But that's just such a small way of living. So I think it's that is what I love are the little signs of reassurance. And I actually feel like our conversation today, like just so the listeners know, like we've never chatted before this conversation, and it's just so wild to see the parallels. And so I consider this a sign, like, okay, you're not alone in your own shit. And this is just a chapter in your story. And it's, you know, there's evidence of people getting through it themselves. You're going to get through it too. So it's like, as much as I ask the universe for a sign, it's also, are we willing to look for the signs? I think is really powerful too.
Yeah, absolutely. Are we really to look and ready to receive and then take our action? Because it's a balance, because it's not just about rubbing crystals on it, and it's also not just about powering through, right? I mean, if you could see my desk, I could lift up my hand and there's like, I mean, there's crystals everywhere, right? I got all the things, right? She's holding up her bowl of crystals. I'm dropping crystals on the floor. We got all of the things, but we also know that we have to be in movement. But how we move is very important, right? How you move forward is very different than the actual effort that you're doing. So I'm Very glad that you brought that up. Now, the money shot. Tell us, Kehla, how we can get in touch with you to learn more about you, commiserate on our journeys, work with you with human design and gene keys. Tell us all the things.
Yes. So in the show notes, I have so many, me being a sacral generator, I absolutely love creating things. I have a ton of free resources. My podcast channel, Living in Fierce Alignment, there's over 360 episodes right now, over soon to be 100 interviews on there. And that's full of human design, gene keys, business resources. I've got a freebies page that, different PDFs to download, different podcast episodes, journal prompts, master classes that you can dive into. And more specifically, I do work with entrepreneurs in bringing in gene keys and human design into their business. And I have my signature program that's currently called the Illuminated Entrepreneur. And this is where I work one-on-one with people and we look at their framework in their business and look at optimizing their business, looking at how to really create their energetic signature so that, you can stand out and make an impact, right? And obviously I shared throughout our conversation today so many examples of how human design has supported me, how it's unleashed me in many ways. And that's really what I'm committed to doing when it comes to sharing this work. So those resources will be in the show notes. You can also find me on Instagram at Kehla G, and that's where I post, that's where I hang out. I share a lot of personal life stuff in my stories, and I just love connecting with others. So I would love to hear from you. If you loved this episode, let us know. Share it, tag us. It's so fun to connect with others and just see how we have so many similarities with people that we don't even know yet.
Absolutely. I love that as well. And for everybody that's listening and is not clicking on the show notes, first of all, shame on you. Second of all, if you do nothing else and you're like, I'm just going to go follow her on Instagram. Her name is spelled Kehlag on Instagram. You're welcome. Kehla, thank you so much for joining me here today. I really appreciate you taking the time to be here.
Thank you for having me. And thank you to the listeners for tuning in and getting on this wild ride with us. we had our own ebbs and flows in the conversation. It was great. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Flourishing Entrepreneur Podcast with Alea Harris. Vibing with what you hear? Leave a 5-star review to spread the love and be sure to click subscribe. We wish you love, light, and abundance. See you next time.